Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Before we dive into today's story, let me ask, from which cities are you watching us tonight? Go ahead and drop your city in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel and lets me keep sharing stories like this one. Now, tonight's story is called My Neighbor's Son Came Back. What he said surprised me. It's a story about memory, time, and how some people reappear in our lives just when we least expect them, and when we most need them. It started on a quiet Thursday afternoon, the kind of day where the wind feels soft and the world seems to be catching its breath. I was sitting on my porch, the same porch I've sat on for nearly 20 years, watching the sunlight ripple through the maple trees that line our street. The neighborhood was still, except for the hum of a lawnmower somewhere down the block and the occasional bark of Mrs. Hanley's old beagle. That's when I saw him, tall, shoulders a little broader than I remembered, walking slowly down the street with a duffel bag slung over one shoulder. It took me a moment to realize who it was. My heart gave that strange little jolt that comes when a familiar face from the past steps right back into the present. It was Michael, my neighbor's son. I hadn't seen him in almost 15 years. The last time I'd spoken to him, he was still in high school, always tinkering with old radios in his dad's garage or helping me carry groceries when my late husband was too tired to do it himself. He'd left for college in another state, and from what I'd heard, never really came back. Until now. He waved when he saw me. "Mrs. Callahan?" His voice had changed, deeper, slower, but that same warmth was there. "Michael," I said, rising to my feet, almost laughing from surprise. "Well, I'll be. Look at you." He smiled in that shy way he used to, but there was something different in his eyes now, a kind of quiet weight that only time and life can bring. "I just got back this morning," he said. "Thought I'd walk the old street to see who's still around." "Come sit," I told him, motioning to the porch swing. "I made lemonade, unless you've graduated to something stronger." He chuckled and climbed the steps, setting down his bag. The boards creaked beneath his feet just like they always had. The afternoon sun painted gold on his hair as he sat down beside me. For a moment, it felt like no time had passed at all. We talked about small things first. The weather, the old neighbors who'd moved away, how the maple in front of my house had grown tall enough to almost touch the power lines. But then his words grew slower, his gaze drifting toward the horizon. "I didn't really come back just to visit," he said quietly. "Dad's gone." The words hung between us, heavy and still. His father, Tom, had been my next-door neighbor for nearly 3 decades. A good man, quiet but kind. I'd known he'd been ill, but I didn't know it had come to that. "Oh, Michael," I said softly. "I'm so sorry." He nodded, eyes on his hands. "Yeah, it's been hard. I didn't even get to say goodbye in person. I was overseas for work." For a while, neither of us spoke. The wind picked up, stirring the wind chime that hung near the porch light, one Tom had made years ago from old copper pipes. The sound was low and gentle, like a voice from long ago. "I didn't know how much I missed this place until I came back," Michael said finally. "Everything looks smaller, but it still feels the same. Do you know what I mean?" "I do," I said. "Sometimes I think places hold memories tighter than people do." He smiled faintly, and for a moment his eyes met mine, not as a boy looking up to a neighbor, but as one soul recognizing another who'd seen her share of loss. There was understanding there, unspoken but clear. As the sky deepened toward evening, I noticed the tiredness in his face, not physical, but the kind that comes from carrying too much for too long. I brought out 2 mugs of tea, and we sat together watching the sunset melt into soft pink and lavender across the roofs. "I used to sit right here," he said, his voice distant. "You be watering your plants, and your husband would be fixing something in the yard. I thought this street would never change." "Nothing ever stays the same," I said. "But sometimes things come back to remind us who we used to be." He looked at me, thoughtful. "Maybe that's why I came back." There was something in the way he said it. Not just nostalgia, but a search for something deeper. A connection, perhaps. A sense of belonging. When the porch light flicked on automatically, I realized how long we'd been sitting there. The air was cool now, carrying the faint smell of rain. He stood, slinging his bag over his shoulder again. "Thank you," he said, "for the lemonade, and for listening." "Anytime," I replied. "You know where to find me." He hesitated, then smiled, that same crooked smile I remembered from years ago. "I might take you up on that." As he walked away, I watched him until he turned the corner, the sound of his footsteps fading into the hush of evening. I felt something stir inside me. Not just sadness, not quite hope either, but a gentle sense of something beginning again. I didn't know it then, but that moment on the porch was just the start, because the next time Michael knocked on my door, what he said would change the way I looked at the past and the future forever. A few days passed before I saw Michael again. I'd been thinking about that visit more than I cared to admit, not in a dramatic way, but in that quiet, lingering way that certain moments do. I'd catch myself glancing at his father's old house across the yard, half expecting to see him stepping out onto the porch. The place looked the same but emptier. The flower beds Tom used to tend were overgrown, and the curtains inside hung closed. It made me ache a little, how quickly life folds up the spaces we leave behind. Then, one Saturday morning, I heard the sound of a car door and footsteps on gravel. I looked out and saw Michael standing in his driveway, holding a cardboard box. He looked up and spotted me. "Morning, Mrs. Callahan," he called. "Morning yourself," I said, stepping out. "You moving in already?" "Trying to," he said with a tired grin. "Just a few boxes for now. The rest will come later." He walked over, carrying the box easily, and set it down near my porch rail. "Mind if I take a break?" "Of course not," I said. "You still take your tea with honey." He looked surprised. "You remember that?" "I remember everything," I said with a small laugh. "Sit down. I'll make us a pot." We sat on the porch again, the way we had that first day, and talked as the steam curled from our cups. This time, the air felt lighter, as if we both silently agreed to leave some of the heaviness behind. He told me about the years he'd spent working abroad, engineering projects in places I'd only ever seen on television. He spoke about deserts and cities, and about how, no matter how far he went, he always pictured this street. "Funny thing," he said, "when I was younger, I couldn't wait to leave. But the farther I went, the more I wanted to come back." "That's how it goes," I said. "Home gets quieter the longer you're gone, but it never stops waiting for you." He nodded, then grew thoughtful. "I think that's what scared me most about coming back. I wasn't sure who'd be here to remember me." "Well," I said, smiling gently, "some of us never forget." Something softened in his face then. Gratitude, I think. Not just for my words, but for being seen. As the morning went on, I helped him unpack a few boxes from his car. Most were filled with books and old tools, a few photographs tucked between them. One photo caught my eye. Michael as a teenager, sitting beside his father on that same porch, both of them laughing. He noticed me looking and smiled faintly. He loved this house more than anything, he said the light here was different, softer. "It is," I said. "It has that kind of glow that makes memories look kinder than they were." We worked quietly for a while after that, the easy rhythm of shared tasks filling the space between us. There was something comforting about it. Two people from different points in time, moving together through the same simple motions. When the sun began to dip, painting the clouds in streaks of gold and coral, Michael leaned against the porch post, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course. Do you ever feel like life slows down too much? Like the days just blend together, and you start wondering if you're supposed to be doing something else?" His words hit closer to home than I expected. I'd felt that same quiet restlessness in the years since my husband passed. The routine had become both my comfort and my cage. "I know what you mean," I said softly. "But maybe slowing down isn't such a bad thing. It gives us room to notice what we missed before." He nodded slowly. "Maybe that's what I came back for, to notice things again." As twilight deepened, a few porch lights flickered on down the street. The scent of someone's barbecue drifted through the air, and the world felt calm in that small-town kind of way that always makes you aware of your own heartbeat. Before he left, Michael looked around once more at the house, the yard, the trees that framed the street like old guardians. "I think I'm going to fix this place up," he said. "Dad would have liked that." "He would," I said. "And if you need an extra pair of hands, I've got a good hammer and a steady aim." He laughed, that warm sound that used to echo through the summers long ago. "I might take you up on that, Mrs. Callahan." "Just call me Anne," I said, smiling. For a second, the air between us held still, a moment caught in the amber light of memory and new beginnings. Then he nodded, his smile softer now. "All right, Anne. I'll see you tomorrow." When he walked back across the lawn, I stood watching until his door closed behind him. The evening settled around me, quiet and full of promise. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long while, I found myself looking forward to it. Over the next few weeks, it became a kind of quiet rhythm between us. Mornings, I'd see Michael outside, sweeping the porch or painting one of the old shutters. By afternoon, he'd often stop by for tea or to borrow a tool, though I had the feeling he didn't really need anything at all. There was something grounding about it, having someone nearby again, hearing laughter drift across the fence as he worked, the sound of a hammer tapping in time with the chirping cicadas. It reminded me of years gone by, when the neighborhood was full of young families, children racing bikes down the street, and the days seemed endless. One evening, I was watering my garden when I heard his voice call out from next door. "Han, you've still got the best tomatoes on this street." I turned to see him holding up a basket, grinning. "Jealous?" I teased. "More like impressed," he said. "Mine didn't survive the summer heat. Maybe you'll teach me your secret." "Patience," I said, "and talking to them once in a while." He laughed. "That explains it. I'm more of a listener than a talker these days." He came over and leaned against the fence, his arms resting casually on the top rail. The evening light fell across his face, soft and golden, and for a moment I saw traces of the boy he used to be. The easy smile, the curious eyes. But there was something deeper now, a steadiness that only comes with living. We talked about small things, the weather, a stray cat that had started prowling the neighborhood, how quiet the town had become over the years. But then the conversation shifted, gently, the way it sometimes does when the air feels just right for truth. "Do you ever think about what you do differently?" he asked suddenly. I set down the watering can and thought for a moment. "All the time," I said, "but I've learned that regret doesn't grow anything new. It just sits there, like an untended garden." He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "My dad used to say that too. He said people spend half their lives looking back, trying to fix things that can't be fixed." "He was a wise man," I said quietly. "He was lonely at the end," Michael said. "I think that's what I can't shake off. I keep wondering if I could have done more, if I should have come home sooner." The way he said it, low, almost to himself, made my heart ache. I stepped closer to the fence. "You can't carry that weight forever, Michael. Guilt has a way of keeping us from healing. He knew you loved him. That's what matters." He met my eyes then, and for a brief second, neither of us spoke. It wasn't silence exactly, more like understanding, quiet and mutual. After a while, he smiled faintly. "You always know what to say." "I've had some practice," I said. "Age has to be good for something." He chuckled, the heaviness in his face softening. "You make it sound like a badge of honor." "It is," I said. "It means you've made it through." A breeze stirred the air, carrying the scent of lavender and the hum of summer dusk. It felt like time had slowed, like the world had shrunk to the small space between two neighbors sharing the kind of honesty that doesn't need to be explained. As the days went by, our friendship deepened in quiet, simple ways. He fixed the squeaky gate between our yards, and I brought him dinner a few times when I cooked too much, though I suspect he knew I did that on purpose. Sometimes we'd sit out late on our porches, lights off, just listening to the night sounds, crickets, the distant hum of cars, the occasional call of an owl. One night, he told me he'd found some of his father's old letters, ones Tom had written but never sent. He asked if I wanted to read them with him. So, the next afternoon, we sat together at his kitchen table, sunlight spilling across the worn wood. The house smelled faintly of dust and cedar, like a place just starting to remember itself. He opened a small box and began reading one of the letters aloud. They were simple letters, musings about the past, notes about neighbors, small confessions of worry and pride about his son. But in every line, there was love, quiet, steady, enduring love. When Michael finished the last letter, he sat there for a moment, looking down at the pages. "He wrote these the year before he passed," he said softly. "He must have known his time was coming." I reached across the table and placed my hand gently over his. "Then maybe he was writing to find peace, and maybe he wanted you to find it too." He looked up at me then, and in his eyes was something I hadn't seen before. Not sadness, not guilt, but release. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for being here, for listening. You've helped me more than you know." "You've helped me too," I said, "more than you realize." When I walked home that evening, the sky was brushed with streaks of violet and rose. The world felt softer somehow, as though the air itself understood something I couldn't quite put into words. I stood for a while on my porch, looking at the faint glow from his kitchen window next door. Life has a strange way of giving back what we thought we'd lost, not in the same form, not at the same time, but in ways that still manage to heal us. And as I listened to the night settling in around me, I realized something. Maybe we don't always get second chances with people, but sometimes life offers us a second chance with ourselves. Autumn had started to slip quietly into town by the time everything changed. The maple trees on our street had turned deep gold, their leaves whispering in the wind like small reminders of how quickly time moves. Every morning, I'd sweep my porch steps and see Michael across the yard, raking leaves into neat piles or sanding one of the porch rails he'd been restoring. The air carried that mix of cool earth and wood smoke, a smell that always makes me nostalgic. The neighborhood felt alive again, almost as if his return had stirred something in all of us. That Saturday, he knocked on my door just after lunch. I opened it to find him holding a small wooden box and smiling. "I think I finally finished something worth showing you," he said. I stepped aside to let him in. "Come on then. Let's see what you've made." He set the box on my table and opened it carefully. Inside was a small wind chime, made of copper pipes and polished wood. It looked almost identical to the one his father had made years ago, the one that still hung by my porch light. "I found some of Dad's old tools," he said quietly. "Used them to build this. Thought maybe you'd want it." I ran my fingers lightly along the smooth edge of the wood. "It's beautiful, Michael. He'd be proud." He smiled, but there was something thoughtful in his expression, as if he was trying to find the right words. "I made it because I wanted to say thank you," You've been like a bridge between who I was and who I'm trying to be now." I looked at him then, really looked. The boy who'd left this neighborhood had come back a man who'd learned how fragile and precious time can be. And maybe in some quiet way, I'd learned the same. "You didn't have to thank me," I said, "but I'm glad you did." He hesitated, then said, "There's something else I wanted to tell you. Something I should have said a long time ago." I felt a flicker of curiosity, but his tone was calm, sincere. He continued, "When I was younger, before I left for college, you were one of the few people who really saw me. You'd ask how I was doing, you'd listen. I never forgot that. I think coming back here, I wanted to return that kindness." His words caught me off guard in the best way. Simple, honest, and deeply human. There was no grand confession, no dramatic turn, just truth. "Kindness," I said softly. "It's funny how it circles back around when we least expect it." He nodded. "It does." Outside, the wind picked up, brushing the window panes with the sound of falling leaves. I hung the new wind chime near the door, and as it moved, it made the softest, most comforting sound, like a memory breathing again. We stood there for a while, listening. The light through the window turned warm and golden, settling on the lines of our faces, two lives touched by time and loss and renewal. He broke the silence first. "I've decided to stay," he said. "For good this time. I got an offer to work remotely. And, well, this feels like home again." I smiled. It always was. In the days that followed, life found a gentle rhythm once more. Michael finished fixing up his father's house, and soon laughter began drifting from its porch again, music playing softly, neighbors stopping by to welcome him back. Sometimes he'd come over in the evenings, bringing fresh baked bread or a new book to share. Other times, we'd just sit outside, talking about everything and nothing while the sun disappeared behind the trees. There was no rush between us, no need for anything more than what was already there: respect, care, and a quiet companionship that filled the empty spaces of our days. As the season deepened, I found myself reflecting on how life has a way of circling back, not to repeat the past, but to let us see it differently. What began as a simple visit had become something that reminded me of how connection doesn't depend on age or circumstance. It depends on heart. One crisp evening, as the first frost glittered on the lawns, Michael stopped by before heading out for a walk. He paused by the porch, looking up at the two wind chimes, his father's and his own, swaying together in the cold breeze. "They sound almost the same," he said. "Maybe that's the point," I said. "Some things change, some don't. That's how we remember." He nodded slowly, smiling. "You've got a way of making everything sound simple." "Life's complicated enough," I replied. "Sometimes it just needs a softer voice." He smiled again, that same gentle warmth that had brought light back to this little corner of our world. Then he tipped his head toward the path. "I'll see you tomorrow, Anne." "I'll be here," I said. I watched him walk down the street until he disappeared around the corner, the last of the sunset glinting on his jacket. The chimes whispered above me, blending their notes into the cool night air. And in that moment I felt it, the quiet peace of knowing that some goodbyes are not the end at all. Sometimes they're just the start of something we didn't know we needed. Thank you for listening to this story. If it touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts below. Tell me, have you ever had someone from your past come back into your life in a way that surprised you? I'd love to hear your story too.